Awesome. Okay, yes, we are recording. This is going to be a fun event where everybody gets to participate and interact and share ideas. And my panelists are going to give you some of their ideas first because they've been around giving speeches on all kinds of topics for a while. Or they have come up with some very unusual ideas for speeches, and I invited them here to share those ideas. One of those unusual people is Steve Savage. I heard a speech from him the other day when I joined Wine and Dine, and I had never heard a speech like that before. So I'm going to be talking to him a little bit. I'll be your moderator, which means I will be asking the panelists questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat box. If you don't know how to do that, you click on chat at the bottom. The chat box comes up, and you can type a message in there for everybody to see. I will be answering questions along the way because every good idea that you come up with in your head may be timely to talk about right at that very, very moment. So the first thing I want to talk about is something that I feel very strongly about, and that is things around us in our environment, the things that are affecting us personally are the subject of most good speeches. If you'll think about it, songwriters have a tendency to write their best work when they're on one end of the pendulum or the other, really, really happy or really, really sad. And those are the songs we like to sing to, we can relate to because our emotions connect really quickly with those songs. One of the other things I notice is things that trigger memories will be great subjects for speeches. For example, I was looking through a box for something and I ran across about 6 loose photographs from when I was about 2. I think I was 2. There's a picture of my brother and I in front of the Christmas tree. And there were 3 of those pictures. And then there were 3 more that I posted on Facebook with a question, who is this? Now, the reason I did this is because it reminded me of a memory that I didn't have because I was too young, but I did have because of the photographs and only because of the photographs. And I have given speeches about that period of time in Toastmasters because it brings back something pleasant or funny or interesting to me. And when that happens, I can talk for 5 to 7 minutes without stopping. And one of the greatest tools any speaker can use is the ability to talk without notes. So how would you do that? Well, when you're talking about something that's really interesting to you, or you're talking about something that you're very familiar with, or you're talking about a story you've repeated to 50 friends already, those things are really easy to repeat in front of perfect strangers. At least I think they are. Now, people might ask me if I was always confident in front of a group, and my answer is absolutely not. But I was confident before I entered Toastmasters. It's just that my former life, I was nervous, uptight, didn't know who I was, had no idea what I had to say or that it was important. It was only when I discovered who I was and started to pay attention that I had value, that I was a real person with real value and decent ideas, that I started to break loose of that thought and start to talk. This was long before I met anyone in Toastmasters, but it did give me that level of base confidence that allowed me, when I did join Toastmasters, to stand up and give an icebreaker about how I got my name, which is highly unusual. All of you have something inside of you, something that tickles your fancy or irks you a little or makes you think. Or maybe it's something you read somewhere. You only read one line and you decided, wow, that needs to be talked about more. Well, those are the things that bring speeches to our lives, bring them into life, basically. So my first question is for Linnea. Linnea, when you're thinking, you've got a project, you're trying to finish a manual, you're trying to get level 4 finished or whatever, how do you pick an idea to match that manual?
I kind of work the other way around. I have a topic and then I find a manual speech that fits it. But if there is a specific topic that I must focus on, I try to look into my own life at my own experience or someone else's so that I can deliver the talk with authenticity and stories and without use of notes.
Yeah. Are you more comfortable when you don't have notes?
No, not if I know the topic.
Okay. If you know the topic, you're more comfortable without notes or more comfortable even if you know the topic with notes?
Well, notes is what kind of notes? I just have bullet points with main ideas, nothing fully written out. Although I may often completely write out a speech to get an idea of the timing, but and then narrow it down. But when it comes to the delivery, I just highlight certain things I want to make sure I mention or to keep me moving forward in the talk.
Okay, great, thank you. Judy, what do you like to talk about most, and what do you find your focus to be most, let's put, most enjoyable when you are delivering a speech?
Oh, I think everybody knows that all I talk about is food. When I'm not working, I spend all of my time cooking or eating or both. So that's really easy. It's something that I know a lot about, and as long as I have an outline, then I can talk about it very naturally. Any other topic, I have no idea. I need notes or I need to practice a lot.
Wow, okay. So how much practice do you do on an unknown topic before you deliver a speech?
Well, there was one speech that I did that was way too long. It was like a research speech, and it was communism versus fascism.
Wow.
I had to squeeze a lot of information into a 5 to 7 minute speech. I went to 9 minutes because I had way too many details that I had memorized. And I rehearsed that speech probably 10 times and I still couldn't get everything. I had birthdays and interesting facts about each of the leaders on each side, and it was a disaster. So for a regular speech though, I did a speech about salty fish. And I rehearsed that about 6 times. Like I find that having a conversation with someone about it helps get your ideas out, and you said it's more concrete. Just writing it seems so final that it doesn't help me much, but I did discuss the story with someone, and that actually helps me flesh out the idea.
Do you ever talk to yourself in the car or on the bus or?
Yeah, in the car, only in the car. So if someone hears me, then I won't repeat my speech because I don't like practicing in front of other people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I talk in the car a lot. I practice openings and closings in the car. Marcia, when you have a speech that you're going to deliver, do you pick the title before you write the speech, or do you write the speech and then pick the title?
I think that sometimes I do. Sometimes it comes after I write my opening, you know, I know what I want to talk about, but I'm not always clear on the topic. So I try and do the opening and then the close, and I get my title from that if possible. So that's why I change my titles a lot.
So how important is it that the title be really, really close to the idea you're trying to transmit?
Well, I know there's lots of different ways to think about it, but I prefer my titles to represent what I'm going to say. It may not be really clear till the body, but no later than the body is my message clear. And then, because that gives me the opportunity to have the message in my title, kind of a unformulated message in my open that says what it is, but then be really clear several times in the body and then repeat it again in the close. so that there's no missing what the message is in the speech at all. I will say I do best when I am more impromptu than when I script out something. That's my process. For instance, my last contest speech was my favorite story about Jack in the Box, my absolute favorite story. But I probably practiced 25 times. And when I got to competing in the contest, of course, it was a new arena, you know, I was on Zoom, standing up, you know, a really uncomfortable thing for me. And that's why I thought, you know, a story that I knew the best would be good, but I couldn't remember any of it. It was like I hadn't practiced at all. But I'll tell you when my best speeches come. And this is, I don't know if I'm proud of this or not. It clearly says how lazy I am, I think. But my best speeches were, because I go through this process, were on my way in the car to Motivated Toastmasters, and I had to speak that day. And I always come up with something good, and it always leads me to a much better speech than I normally would have had. And for me to become skilled at a speech, I have to practice it in front of people like 5 times, same speech. I don't do well. I mean, that first time at Motivated, when I was driving down there, it was great. Everybody loved it, you know, and I could have no sleep. I could be really angry about something, but when I get there, it comes across really well. If I don't do that and I practice and I practice and I practice at home, I might as well go jump in the swimming pool, because it's not of any use. I just can't do it that way.
Well, when I'm evaluating speakers, I often will tie the title of the speech to the talk, especially if I'm evaluating for Toastmasters. But I find that I am more interested in hearing speeches where the title is so intriguing, so off the wall, so interesting, all on its own, that I want to know what that speech is about, and I want to hear it. Sometimes the title is not connected to that basic idea in the talk, but somehow, some way, the author of that speech has come up with something that connects them to their talk, and they put those words down as the title. And maybe it's a situation where they're trying to talk about something that is clever or reach to a clever topic. I find myself doing that, and then I go back in and realize that the only person that would understand that is me, so I change the title before I deliver. But I find that for me, when I have to write a speech that is for a project or a plan or a manual or in general for a Toastmasters club, where the controls, where the rules of engagement for a speech are in place and you're following the project, choosing the title for me always comes at the very end. After the talk is already on paper in an outline form, or practiced a few times, or I hear myself saying things, because I find that somewhere in that speaking out loud or in that writing process, words come out and stand out and make that title happen. I don't like to use formulas for titles because they become dry and uninteresting most of the time. For me, I don't like myself sounding dry. I do that often enough. I don't need that in my speech. So I like to pick things that pop into my head. It's kind of like Marcia said, spontaneously, out of the speech, out of creating it. This sounds like what I'm talking about, or this sounds like what I'm feeling right now. And that's how the speech title comes out in my experience. Steve, I have a wonderful question for you. You did this really wild, excitable talk the other night through Wine and Dine. It was so much, there was so much body movement, vocal variety, and excitement in every moment that you spoke, and it was as if you were a sports announcer. Can you tell me the title of that speech?
Well, thanks for that introduction, Cersei, and good evening, fellow Toastmasters. I'm really humbled to be here, excited, and I'm not sure who chose me to be here, but whoever it is, maybe it was you, Cersei, but I've been on a cloud, pink cloud, since being invited to be on this panel with such distinguished speakers and accomplished Toastmasters. So thank you very much. To the question, what was the title?
Yes.
Well, I had a different, that wasn't my main focus. I have to admit, I'm going to use the word newbie because I just finished my first year of beekeeping. So I'm only my third year of Toastmasters. I just got rid of stage fright in the past 6 months. So
That's good.
Understanding our communication, you guys were talking about using notes and how comfortable. I'm just starting to get comfortable and figure out the formulas, how to write an effective speech. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. And I know when Lance speaks, people listen, and I really appreciate him being here tonight. He's a wealth of knowledge. So I'm learning that formula from him and pathways, of course. So the title, The Will to Prepare, and I kind of tied that in with the will to win. And the story basically, I mentioned that at that time I was coaching these young kids that I was listening to a lot of Zig Ziglar, motivational tapes, and Les Brown. So that was one of his lines, the will to prepare is more, or the will to prepare is more important than the will to win. So that kind of tied into the story.
Right. But
Does that answer any of the questions?
Yeah, but I wanted to point out something. You used a word almost every other paragraph in that speech, and the word was lug nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that attracted me to your speech was the repetition of that word.
It wasn't too many times.
No, in fact, I was so intrigued by it because for me, it's a word that has a funny sound when you say it. It has a funny meaning when you think about it, and especially since it was tied to a baseball team, right? Or was it basketball?
Basketball.
Basketball team. So it was a sports talk with a car word and a motivational title. So it was a mixed bag of all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
And yet from beginning to end, that speech was what's next for me.
Okay, thank you.
What's next? And it was so cool to listen to your voice reach out through the mic, through the camera, and talk to us like that. I was so impressed.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
That's why I invited you here, because I was impressed.
Okay, thank you. I had no idea. I kind of felt down after the speech because I'm using a phone.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little postage stamp, so I kind of had to go back. So you get no feedback. That's just part of the downside of, there's lots of upsides to Zoom, but one of the downsides is we don't get that energy connection or feedback that we all like. That's what that's why we speak. We like to be, recognized and, we like attention. But at Toastmasters, we learn to pay attention as well as get attention. So that's pretty cool.
We certainly do. Lance, you are the master of the core idea. Now, I know that the core idea is really important in things like TED Talks, TEDx Talks, things like that. But how do you feel about making sure the core idea is part of the conversation in the talk? You are quiet. You're not talking. You're talking, but there's no something coming out of your mouth. Nope. No talking. Nothing yet. I don't know why. Did the kitty eat your microphone? Nope. Nope. Nothing yet. Nothing yet. I hear banging, but I don't think that's you. Oh, okay. And now it's really quiet. You're close. Okay, I'll call on somebody else. Mike Carland. I talked to you the other day about the fact that you could write the same topic speech over and over and over and deliver it for like 10 speeches and complete a project. All the speeches would have the same topic. And you said something very interesting in that conversation. You said, I like all my speeches to be about different things. How hard is it for you to pick all those different things? Or do you have just a wealth of things that intrigue you that make you think, oh, I could write a speech about that. Oh, I could write a speech about that.
Yeah, it's all past experiences, and I can tell you a lot of the speeches I've written are not things that have happened like in the last couple of years. They're like, my last one was memories of high school and I guess people that I've known. Yeah, that's, or my next, the one that I'm working on right now is someone that I knew who was a real character, and it's going to be all about him. So, yeah.
Yeah. Is it easy for you to pick speeches?
Pick speeches.
Yeah, like when you're going through your manuals and trying to complete things, is it pretty easy for you to find a topic to talk about?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I'm working on the last speech in the humorous, or speaking humorously, advanced manual, and I'm finding that one was the most challenging. And I thought, I thought I was a funny person, but when it comes to a formula where it's got to be a humorous story at the beginning and then a joke at the end and all these different things, and I try to stay true to the objectives of the speech.
Okay.
So yeah, that I've been finding a challenge, and that's the last one that I'm working on right now.
Yeah. How is it that the objectives of the speech trip you up the most?
It's, well, I guess the main thing, yeah, the main point was that a joke where it says to begin with a joke and then a humorous story. And I thought they were going to lump everything together, like the whole thing was humorous, but I have to come up with a joke, and I didn't want to go look up like a joke that's already been written. I wanted to, put something together, or at least change it, personalize it to the story. So I found that hard to do, where I think it was in project number 4 where it says to begin with a joke and then tie it into a story, and then end with a humorous story at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That I remember talking to you about that. That was a toughie. That was a toughie. Now I'm gonna let Judy ask a question, and then I'm gonna come back to you, Mike, because I want to talk to you about something you did at Daybreak, because there's somebody else on this panel that can participate in that with you. So go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, I do have a question, because sometimes when I read a speech, let's say I have to tell a story about something that happens, and when you listen to NPR, they'll say something like, when I was a child, I would eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and then it would be this amazing story. I don't know what I've come to understand from seeing all these different speeches is that there's like a really important message that's bigger, right? Like, this peanut butter and jelly sandwich my mom made, and don't ever take your mom for granted, or something like that, or this memory was blah blah blah. So that's the big idea, and I'm guessing that that's a formula. Like, you have small events or one little thing that happens in your speech, but you need like one big important idea, and somehow you attach it to the idea so that when you close, it's not just a somewhat interesting story, but also there's some sort of overarching concept or moral to it. So how is that what you do for every single speech? I know it's very similar when you talk to someone or have a conversation or tell a story.
Well, I don't, but I'm more interested in listening to speeches that are more like two people talking in a room, or two people meeting on the street and discussing something that they share in common. And I just read very recently, I think it was 2 days ago, that Ralph Smedley, when he started Toastmasters, was talking to everyone about being conversational, not motivational, not inspirational, not informative, but conversational. And one of the things that I notice about every speech that I really, really like is when I walk away, I really, really like the person who was telling the story, because I connected with that story and them, because they share things that are personal, their emotions come through, and they become human, especially in Toastmasters. I find that the most wonderful experiences I've had in Toastmasters is when I watch someone give a speech, especially icebreakers, that are talking about something they really feel, think, or know about themselves or their family. It doesn't have a motivational bend to it. It doesn't have any kind of great idea. It's just sharing, and sharing is human, and we love that. Lance, are you ready?
I think so. Can you hear
Okay,
me now?
your volume's really low. Can you raise it up?
I'm not sure how to do that, and now your pictures all went away. Let's see. Is that loud enough?
It's getting there. We have to be really quiet because Lance is really quiet.
Yeah, right. I don't know why. I'm never quiet. I don't know why I'm quiet now. I just wanted to answer the question you asked me before, which is about central idea. As many of you know, I've maintained that most speakers that I hear in Toastmasters and in politics and anywhere else, the shortcoming is that they don't really know or haven't clearly identified what it is they want to say. And that's what I call the central idea. It's what message do you want someone to walk away from the speech remembering? And that remembering that central idea will probably trigger other things from the speech that were, in essence, main supporting points. For example, the speech that I'm taking forward for the humor competition is called "Your Car is Who You Are." That's a title. It's also a central idea, and it's somewhat rare that a title and a central idea are the same because they have different purposes. The title is to get people to tune into your speech and listen. The central idea is the main thing you want them to remember. So in the speech, "Your Car is Who You Are," I talk about the first 3 cars that I own and how they help develop parts of my personality. In short, your car is who you are. On the other hand, the speech hangs around a way to go to sleep. And I could have had a title like, "Let me help you get to sleep at night," or something like that. It would have been the same speech, but I would have used that phrase instead of "your car is who you are." But essentially, it's the same speech, right?
Right.
So the process of creating a speech for me, and I've been teaching this for 52 years. Actually, I've been saying 52 years for longer than that, so it's probably 53 years now, is first, what topic do you want? And as has been discussed, the topic should either be something you know about and like to speak about, or something you want to know about and want to speak about and are willing to do the research for. Once you've got the topic, and as somebody else said, if it's something that you talk about regularly anyway, it's going to be easier for you to remember. So that's an important thing to remember. But once you have the topic and look at the audience, what is it that I can give this audience about this topic that is of value to them? And that's very important. Do I want to entertain them, amuse them, inform them in some way, persuade them, inspire them? Those are the basic different types of speech. Amuse is part of entertain. So,
Right.
And often it's more than one of those combined. I mean, an informational speech can be amusing. A persuasive speech can be inspirational. So you have to be clear what you want to happen with this particular audience. Once you've got that down, then narrow the topic, because almost every topic is too large for 5 to 7 minutes or even 8 to 10 minutes. So what portion of that topic you want, and that's where you create the central idea. And once you have the central idea, how do you support it? So that's kind of a long answer to your question, I think.
Yeah.
If you want more clarity, be sure and ask me.
Thank you.
And let me
Judy, I wanna-
compliment you on finding a way to get people here by sending them an email telling them they're on the panel about an hour before the panel starts. That's great.
No, I sent that email to you 3 days ago.
I didn't get it. I just got the one. that-
It's okay.
I thought,
That's
damn,
all right. I didn't hear from you, so I sent it again. Judy, I wanted to get back to the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. When I would be writing a talk about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, whether it's talking about whether I like that for lunch or that's my go-to meal, or like Melissa Roughton, that's what I lived on for 3 years while I didn't have any money. Whatever the reason for the peanut butter sandwich being in the talk, that's what you talk about. You don't have to segue to mom or anybody. You can always talk about what that sandwich reminds you of. What is that sandwich to you? Like for me, I know that I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which is one of the reasons why I can bring it back up. I do not make my peanut butter and jelly sandwich like most people. So I could talk about that for 5 to 7 minutes and make a speech out of it. So here we are talking about speech writing. You bring up a topic and I've already got a speech that I can go, oh, I can talk about that. I can talk about that. So my biggest suggestion is to always go with what you feel about the thing you just put out there. How do you feel about it? What's funny about it? What's interesting about it? What's different about it in your life? How is it for you that it's different? And then you've got a speech, 5 to 7. You know, one of the Linnea, I'm going to ask you because I can't remember who said this. Who was the person who said that it takes longer to write a 5 to 7 minute speech than does a 20-minute one?
Mark Twain.
That's it. So you can jabberjaw a lot. Long talks, 20 minutes, easy. Do a keynote, it's easy to do because we all joined Toastmasters and discovered we like to talk. It's really hard, like Lance said, to filter out all the stuff that doesn't matter and put only in this talk what does matter. So why not start with what matters and go from there? In every speech you ever deliver, first of all, every time you talk about something you love, you smile, your eyes light up, everything's good. When you start thinking about the details, your face tenses up, your shoulders go up, everything goes south real quick. So I always suggest pick, especially for icebreakers, or if you're nervous or you're new at this, pick those topics that if somebody asked you at a party that you didn't know them, they asked you about it, you could talk to them about it without thinking that it's a speech. Because if you can talk about it, it becomes a conversation, and conversations make really good speeches. Mike Carland, you did something that is not always done in competition, but is part of our Toastmaster manual, and that is you delivered a roast. And you roasted Linnea.
Yes.
Now, why was that easy for you?
Because yeah, she's got so many facets to her, and I know her. I knew her as a friend even before Toastmasters, so I knew all these different areas, and I wrote down that like the different, like an outline, the different categories, and then where I had more ammunition behind it, I did that, and then I interviewed yourself and got some more information and found out some inside things, and yeah. Do it. Yeah.
What part of writing the roast were you unsure about at first?
Unsure about. Well, I guess I didn't think I had enough areas to concentrate on.
Uh-huh.
And I knew I could mention Linnea being hearing impaired. I knew how to handle that, and I know how to say it without being cruel or and I looked on the internet, and there was a few jokes there, not a whole lot, but
Uh-huh.
some that were clever about that. And then I kind of expanded more on her self-publishing, the book the first book she wrote, and that had a lot to go on.
A lot of material there.
Yeah, a lot of material behind that.
If I can interject, I think the reason why it was easier for Mike to roast me is because it's easier to roast a person who makes fun of themselves, has a sense of humor, and he could have gone a lot of directions because, I'm just a strange person. But you always want to roast somebody who's got a sense of humor and is laid back and especially makes fun of themselves.
Linnea, do you think that a roast speech, one that's based in the formula of roasting, could make a 5 to 7 humor speech?
Yes and no, because oftentimes a roast is a series of one-liners or two-liners
Uh-huh.
of jokes. If it were to be a speech, it would have to be a beginning and a middle and an end. Much more structured. I guess you could do that. Well, there are 3 things about Linnea that make her weird. One is hearing loss, one is crushing snails in her aquarium, and the other is writing books. And then expand on those with jokes.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I see roast more as one-liners.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that is because for me, humor has always been the hardest topic to use. I did not do well with the humor manual. Somebody in one of my advanced clubs said I should take the humor track, and I said, no, thank you, because I knew that wasn't going to work and it would be too hard for me. So my topics, my speech topics, sometimes have humor in them. Usually that humor is more sarcastic or wry or not so, it was definitely not slapstick. That's not me at all. But I find that people who deliver speeches where the topic segues into something funny, it's much more fun to listen to, much more easy on the audience.
Oh yeah, even eulogies can have some humor in them. They should.
Yeah, eulogies especially should have humor in them.
Yeah,
because
but
we're so dark.
the general rule of thumb, if it makes you chuckle, chances are it's going to make others chuckle.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. When you're delivering a talk that's humorous, when you're developing a talk that's humorous, how do you decide what fits? How do you tell the difference between like humorous, light humor, sarcastic humor, slapstick humor? How do you know what fits in a topic that you're talking about? Let's say you're doing a speech about cats. How do you develop the humor side, or does that just come naturally to you?
Well, a lot of times I begin with researching jokes and stories that already exist and then tailor them to my topic, to what I'm talking about.
That's a good idea.
That's always, in my roast training, I encourage people, find out facts about a person, but don't try to be funny telling the truth about them. Find jokes and put their name in as the protagonist. That works very, very well.
Yeah. Janet, you did one of the best roasts I've ever heard of a top trio leader at an ANI. Don't you agree, Linnea?
It was somebody who roasted Janet.
No. Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right.
Yeah.
Janet got roasted. That's right. I forgot about that.
And you know why? Because there are a million blonde jokes out there.
Oh man, you guys like roasted me.
How did you?
And
How
what
did
was
you-
interesting is the person who delivered that roast is not somebody that's known to have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
I
But,
know. And
but by taking the jokes and tailoring them to
That's right.
incidences that you went through with Janet, like being on an airplane or whatever, it was stellar, and that is on the internet. If I could find the link and put it in chat.
It was probably the best experience for an awards, an installation banquet ever.
Yeah, it was
Ever.
really funny.
It was
you
hysterical.
know what? Like, if I could say something, I seems like, and I could be wrong, seems like they've taken the roasts out, and I think the roast should be a part of it. I don't know. I was roasted royally, and I was cool with it. And it's not like everyone's trying to be mean. They're just having fun, and that's what a roast is. You're having fun.
Yeah.
Right? I wanted to roast Kathleen, but she didn't have any roasts. I want to
I
get her
know.
back.
I know. And you did a really good comeback, as I recall, to that roast. You were a very, very good sport about all of it. And it just made the whole event so much fun to be there, because in the most cases, those events are dry, and the only people that are interested are those that are getting awards. And that segment was really fun to listen to. I had a good time.
I'm putting the link to the post with the video and all in chat.
Oh my gosh. And you guys, you, Linnea and Cersei, roasted me pretty bad too, but it was good. It was so hilarious.
It was fun. It was fun. Everybody should
liked it.
experience that from somebody who likes you, never from somebody who doesn't, because the person that likes you does the best job of it. So I have to watch out because Linnea's collecting data.
Okay.
Oh God, I could go on forever.
It's terrible. I don't know what I'm
And
going to talk
based
about.
on true stuff, I don't have to go looking
That's
for
terrible.
many jokes.
That's just terrible. But we all have to have a really good sense of humor. What I'd like to do is I'd like to open it up to people on the call that maybe are just listening to us now that might have some questions about speeches you're writing now that you want help with. Anybody? Anybody unmuting, wanting to talk?
Can you repeat that question, Cersei?
Sure. We've been talking a lot. And what I'd like to know is if anybody on this call who has not spoken, who's maybe developing a talk right now and is somewhere stuck and wants some ideas, wants some feedback about it, or wants a question answered, wants to speak up and ask that question now, or let us know what you're talking about. Yes, Alethea.
How do you incorporate visual aids in a speech when they're online? Because we had to transition. I'm used to doing visual aids in person.
Sure.
How do you do it online? I'm about to give a speech on Monday, and I would like to use some visual aids because I'm going to be talking about how to use Zoom.
Okay. How big is the visual aid?
Really, I'm just going to be using Zoom as my visual aid, like showing them how to do the things on Zoom. I'm having my club on how to do
That is really tricky, and I'll tell you why. Zoom itself doesn't allow you to see Zoom screen. So your best bet is to do screenshots, put them in a PowerPoint, and share your screen while you're talking about those various things. I don't know if you have a Mac or a PC, but on a PC, there's something called snipping tool, and you can snip your screen as you're working through Zoom and paste it right into PowerPoint and create your slides. The other thing is you can open up Zoom as an individual, and you can, what I did is I have a lot of computers, so I opened up 2 different computers. At one time I had a mannequin sitting in this chair that I'm in right now with no head. So it was like this, with this mannequin sitting in this chair. That was one person. And then I had another person signed into another computer that was not on video, just a name. So I had at least a couple people on my screen when I did the screenshots. And that gave it a more realistic look. If you can get friends to sign in with you just to play while you do the screenshots, that would be good too. because then you'll be able to show how this works and take the screenshots, create your slides, and that would be how I would do it. If I were doing visual aids about something physical, the biggest thing is you have a camera that's right here, right there. See it? Okay, so your visual aid has to be in view, but not so close that it goes out of focus. Not good. You want to bring it close to your face because your face is in focus, but it has to be big enough to see. Okay, and try not to move it around too much. Try not to make the reflection of the light around you shine on it so that it disappears. There's Mr. Yoda. For example, I think it was a book. I don't have a book. Linnea, can you grab a book off your shelf?
Yeah.
Any book.
Yeah.
Okay. No, bring it up, up, up. No, no, like, no. Higher, back toward your face. Back toward your face. Come back. And now lean it where the bottom is facing the camera more. No, the other way. Okay, not that far. Come back a little bit. Slow, 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 slow. Right there. Now, does everybody see the reflection on that book? You can't see the title. But as soon as she moved it just slightly, the title comes into view. See? So you want to practice that because every single book is a flat surface. Not all of them are shiny. Some of them are matte, so they don't do that. But you want to see what angle, and it won't be the angle you think. It definitely won't be flat to the camera. It'll be different, and you'll want to practice with that while you're practicing your speech if you're going to use a book as a visual aid, because it will reflect. Yes, Lance.
A little tip I have, I don't know if on your computer the camera is visible or not. On mine, the camera is a black dot with a black background, so I don't know where it is. And it's hard for me to look right into your eyes. So if I'm looking at the screen and I'm looking at your faces, it doesn't look like I'm looking at you. So I made this thing with tape on the back. It's the hole in the middle. And I put this right over the camera lens like that. And now from a distance, I can glance immediately right into your eyes like I'm doing now. Instead of here I'm looking at Janet and here I'm looking at Mike Carlin, but here I'm looking right into your eyes. That's
Yeah.
a trick.
That's good. That's cute. Charming. You have a product. Maybe you could sell it during the pandemic. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Hi, James. Unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay. Jovan, do you want to go first?
Sure. This isn't necessarily a writing question, but it is a question to where, you know, how we record our ums and words of, you know, filler words. I've done better with my ums, but one word I can't seem to get rid of is you know. And I use you know, and I've started to notice in every day, and they're incorporated in my speech. So what recommendations do you have to remove those words that we don't want in there?
Well, you've already started. You said it yourself. I'm starting to recognize it. Make sure you're always listening and recording your speech before you give it so you can hear it. The more you hear yourself say those things, the faster it goes away. My go-to word is so. I say it all the time. I hardly ever hear it. Until I focus on the fact that I say it, I don't stop. And that's how you do it. You want to make sure you always know, I'm the so person. I'm the you know person. I'm the person. Whatever it is, that's who you are. I am that person. You might put up a little sign in your speaking space where you're talking. Don't say you know. So you see that when you're talking, and then that will help as well. Any reminder that you are that guy will help you get rid of it. The other thing that I find in practice is to practice what Linnea calls a pregnant pause. It's not really long. It's not really short. It's sort of in the middle. It's the space between two sentences. Practice not talking, then talking, so that you can get that space, that empty space in your comfort zone. Because when you say things like or so or you know, it's connecting two sentences together that you're uncomfortable leaving a space between. Now, I would suggest a really exaggerated pause when you're practicing, because you will hear that pause, you'll be focusing on it, and then when you deliver the speech, because every time we deliver a speech, it's faster than when we practiced it, that pause will shorten up and you'll have exactly what you want. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is a little scary, but
Wait a minute, Lance, we can't hear you. You are so quiet. I don't know where your mic is, but it's nowhere.
yeah, I'm
Now it's off. Now it's on.
there's a little thing here with as audio settings. Go ahead. I'll type to him. I will chat.
Oh, okay, great. You will chat. Okay, James.
So Jovan, for every word, what is it? You know, at Lofty Speakers, we will charge you $1. Okay.
That's
Awful way
awful.
to raise
we're
funds.
gonna count.
That is
That will definitely
awful.
work.
That's a terrible idea.
Originally, that was Lance's idea about having a little piggy bank at our club for all the odds and ums, and everyone pay 5 cents or quarter or whatever.
Yeah.
So we tried that a little bit before. It never really took off, but we tried it.
Yeah.
All right. So my question is this: standing up versus sitting down, speaking on Zoom. I know that for the contest, speech contest, we tell the contestant to stand, and we want to watch them from head to above the waist.
Right.
Now, I assume, you know, naturally we want to do that for regular speech, club speech as well. Some of us, I don't know, it's a little difficult. It can be. Now, I live in an apartment, for example. Thin wall. If I use a vocal variety, my next door neighbor might call police or something, right? Whereas, and my laptop has a small camera that probably won't capture me well. I probably have to get on from my smartphone and use the tripod to stand up to give a speech.
Okay, I want to talk about that specifically because there are two schools of thought about it. One is we don't want to, well, one is we shouldn't be sitting, and the other is we should be sitting. Why do we sit and give a speech? Because we're practicing a skill that we can use for the future. How many webinars have you seen where the person is standing? Unless they're walking around with their phone and they're showing you their yacht or something that they, you know, bought, their big house, and it's zooming around and you're seeing that zooming. For the most part, the most educational webinars, the ones that are teaching us something, some person is sitting in a chair, dressed very well. You know, you can tell they're putting on a pretty good appearance, but they're sitting. The background is usually plain, it's white, or it's an office kind of space, but it's never a virtual background that I've, you know, noticed, because that sort of came in with the Zoom era. But it is, people are seated. Number one, it gives the audience a closer connection to the person offering that information. It becomes significantly more important when the speech is delivered, or the talk, the webinar, the research, the sales pitch is delivered in a proximity that is close to your face, in a similar manner where somebody would be talking to you at a networking event. When you're talking about delivering a speech for a contest, such as Toastmasters or Rotary or something like that, you might be standing because that's what they're used to. Or you might be standing because your body English requires that kind of standing for that delivery of that kind of talk. I've watched many, many world champion of public speaking speakers practice their talks in front of clubs where they're filmed from the waist up, and they're pacing and they're doing their body gestures and things like that. And you can see pretty much every part of their gesture. When they are lifting their arms from their waist, you see the entire scope of that movement. When they're raising their arms over their head or they're pointing to the left or right, you see the whole thing. You're not missing anything. Our eyesight is wide angle. We have a really wide angle view unless you have an eye condition that prevents that. So we are used to seeing people who are on a stage delivering a talk with more visual in the picture. But for our education, for us learning about speaking on video, I don't think it's as significant to do a stand-up speech as it is to do a speech that is presented well. So if your speech calls for more body, stand up. If your speech calls for more of an intimate or research or informative kind of talk, stay close. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to be like this, just your head. You want to be like this, where most of your body is showing. So you want to back up a little bit from the camera so your head, shoulders, mid-chest are showing in the view. That's a more professional look in delivering a speech on video, especially if it's, let's say you're an entrepreneur and you're selling something. You want them to be able to see that you're wearing a suit and tie or a polo shirt and a jacket, or, you know, a nice necklace on with a nice blouse. You want that showing because that's a presentation that is part of delivering that webinar. So if you're practicing something for a business, you'll want to look at how you look on screen, and you don't want it just to be your head. And that's just my personal opinion. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
A quick question. In the contest, we have to be standing waist up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, pretty much, yes, because that's a rule that Toastmasters has laid out for us. But they also said it's not set in cement. They are telling the judges who are doing the international semifinal viewing of the video not to count someone down for not being ultra clear and their body not being as full, you know, foot to head. So they're supposedly not doing that. And I'm hoping that that's true, although we'll all know when we finally see the finals, because that's where you'll see what made it through semifinals. Personally, I'm getting ready to give some training tomorrow and Saturday and Monday, or tomorrow, Saturday and Tuesday, for some of our speakers. And I will be looking at how they look on video, because I know that there's heavy, heavy competition in international. And we don't want any speaker from District 52 to be thought of as less than because their video isn't done. Now, Lance, you didn't sign up, but you should look for my email about that as well, so that we can talk about yours.
I need to test my microphone.
Yeah, you do. You definitely do. Yeah.
Oh, I got a.
Hi, Mike.
Hi. Yeah, if no one else has any question, I've got a question about, I'm working on my next speech, and the project is the humorous speech. And it says in there, use exaggeration to tell a humorous speech. And I can tell you it's about someone that I knew years ago, and this guy was very thrifty. I mean, really cheap. And so I've got several ways that in which he was cheap. Do I just take the facts and just exaggerate it more?
Yeah, take what you learned from the roast and use that kind of exaggeration in this speech, and you'll do fine. because the one of the things that the roast teaches us is to exaggerate. Okay, that's why I was asking the question about the roast and a humor talk, because I find that sometimes our reticence to using roast material in a talk that could be much better when we exaggerate or talk about something that's maybe just not true at all. It makes the talk more humorous, makes it funnier, makes it more interesting and more engaging for the audience. So I would use those skills that you learned in the roast and use that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, even if you had to use somebody that you know is what we call frugal and that everybody recognizes, like, you know, Jack Benny and, you know, okay?
All right, yeah, okay.
Okay.
There's a suggestion, go
Okay.
online and watch Dean Martin roasts.
Oh yeah, have you been watching the Dean Martin roasts at all?
I've watched them in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really well done. Well done stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Ava, did you have anything? I know you came up to the screen once, but I didn't know if you had a question or.
Oh, I was typing in the little links to make sure, because I know when the chat closes, everything goes away.
Oh
but,
yeah.
One thing I'm pretty new to Toastmasters, and I haven't done really any speech yet. I've done the inspirational, I think like 1 or 2 minutes, and some table topics here and there. And I'm actually going to host be Toastmaster next week. So totally not nervous at all, but I do have a question about, I know in my path, like the first speech is supposed to be about me. And I'm having a really hard time trying to figure out what I want to focus on. I don't think one thing necessarily defines me. And I also don't really care to talk about myself. And so I'm having a very difficult time coming up with that. And it's like the first hurdle before all the other speeches that I am more comfortable giving, but I have to give that one first. And I'm having a hard time figuring out what to say about myself.
I always have, when I've mentored the new members in Toastmasters clubs, I always advise them to talk about something they're very comfortable with. An icebreaker is so that we get to know you, but we don't have to get to know you. We can just hear something that you like to talk about. It doesn't have to be about you. There are a lot of things you can use as examples. You can go, like Linnea said earlier, the 3 weird things about me are, you know, that kind of thing. You can always go that direction. But I like to hear icebreakers when people are uncomfortable with talking about themselves, to hear about things that are in their life that they can talk about comfortably, like their cat, their dog, the guy sitting behind you. You know, it doesn't matter who you talk about or what you talk about. The important thing, there's only one criteria for an icebreaker, and that is to speak in front of a group for the first time. We don't care what you talk about. It doesn't really matter. So I suggest that I'm sure there are things that if somebody asked you about it, you could talk for a little while without any question. That's what you want to build your speech around. Something that you really like to talk about. And it doesn't have to be connected to you at all, because when you're talking, you are connecting with us anyway. Okay, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Here's a suggestion. You might just take a piece of paper and write down 3 things that you want people to know about you.
Well, what if she can't write 3?
She can, I know she can.
No, don't listen to him. That's too much pressure. Don't listen to him. Talk about whatever you want. And you know, it's only 4 to 6 minutes. It's actually only 3.5 to 6.5. So if you have 3.5 minutes of something that you really like, doesn't matter what it is. Let's say you like to ride a bike, or you found a story, you read a book that during this pandemic you hadn't been reading for years, but you found this book and you just couldn't put it down. Talk about that. It doesn't matter. Anything. And once that hurdle's broken, then you're wide open for talking about anything else you want. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Benny. I have a question. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So I would like to ask, it's more of a general question, like how do folks go about, writing their speech? Do they just start writing paragraphs? Do they work on bullet points? Do they do some other? I know Lance mentioned a template. Maybe if someone can chime in on that.
Okay, Lance, you can talk about your template. I'll let you.
Thank you. If anybody wants my template, I'll just send me an email. I put it in the chat, my email address, and I'll send it to you. But the answer to your question is, if it's something you know about, as Cersei said, if it's something you know about and talk about anyway, you can probably just make a few notes and talk from that. But if you want to lead people through a subject carefully, and if there's very specific ways that you want to say something, I will write my speech out entirely. And in writing it out, I will find clever, interesting, useful ways to say things. And then I literally memorize those. So I'll give a speech 20 times to myself and to someone else, my neighbor, my sister, before I take it to a club. And that's especially true with the contest. I've had 4 weeks. I must have given my both contest speeches 20, 30 times. And every time I change things a little bit, I come up with new and better ideas. But each speech has been carefully written. Now, that's not necessarily the only way to do it. If you know a subject, you can just talk about the subject. But it is helpful if you have a couple of main points and then you explain those main points with little stories, anecdotes, quotes, statistics, all kinds of things. Does that help? You're muted, Benny.
Yeah, it does help. Thank you, Lance, for that.
Send me an email, I'll send you my format.
Benny, the other thing that you might want to do is only write down, fill a whole piece of paper with just single words about that subject. Single words, no sentences, no paragraphs, no nothing. Just, if you're talking about maybe your cat or a car or something, talk about the color, talk about how it feels, talk about the price, talk about the speed, talk about anything. Write those words down on a piece of paper. Look at the words, and as you look at the words, think about how you would describe that word and write that down. So you can develop a speech from those singular word ideas as well. Try not to put yourself in a box. It's really important that you loosen up and don't try and fit into anybody else's way of doing it. Because you, Benny, are an individual. You have lots of stuff inside you, and you could probably write novels if you let yourself just think out loud. And I think when you do that on a piece of paper, you will find those speeches inside. What I did when I first started out in Toastmasters, because I hadn't done any formal speech writing, I wrote down single sentence ideas for speeches. They were just ideas. And I had at least 12 of them before I even wrote a single speech. Those singular sentence ideas developed into speeches over time. So,
one of the things that I always do before any speech is I figure out how much time I have, 7 minutes times 130 words a minute, and that gives me an idea of how many words could be in my speech. So then I write it out and see if what I want to say is going to fit in that time frame. Because as Judy found out, she has way too much information for a 7-minute speech. And taking the minutes you have times 130 will give you an idea of how many words you can say in your speech. It really helps. And it eliminates a lot of stuff that shouldn't be in a speech and having to speed up to make it fit and all that. And also picking what is important to be in the speech. I always do that. 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and write it out, do a word count and word, and go from there.
It also helps if you know by timing yourself in advance, if you know where you should be at the various points in your speech. For example, here in my speech, I've written 2:15. That's because I know when I get to this point, when I practice it, I should be roughly at 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And then when you do it over and over again with a timer, you get used to getting it done in the right amount of time. I have a problem. I often run over, and I do not want to be disqualified in the international speech.
Right.
Yeah. Marcia.
So when I write out my speeches, which is often, but they aren't always my best, but I do have that tendency to go over as well. And so I never exceed 500 words, and sometimes they're as little as 400. And that's the pace that I go at. And it's a very valuable lesson for you to learn. Write out a 500 word speech and see how many minutes it takes you to finish it. And that way you'll have your speaking rate.
And to tag on what she just said, in a 5 to 7 minute speech, don't ever let it go over 7 minutes in practice, because in real life, audience response, forgetting things, adding things is going to add extra time. You have that extra 30 seconds. If you finish at 7 minutes instead of 7:29, you're still okay. If you finish at 7:31, you're dead.
Yeah, you're not okay. Yeah, yeah. I find oftentimes that listening to other people tell stories or share things helps me to develop the next best idea. Today, it was a word of the day from Don Kogan. He shared a dictionary.com word of the day, and I went, oh my God, that's a great speech. And it's just a word, but it was obvious to me that I was intrigued by the word. It was new to me. With dictionary.com, they have the pronunciation. I went, this is so easy for me to think up ideas around this. So I mentioned it back to him. I said, this would make a great speech. So maybe Don will deliver it. Ideas come at you from everywhere, everywhere. Be open to them. Let the pictures, oh, what was the word? It was, I'm going to find it because it was fun. It was about being in close proximity to someone else. Hold on. Here it is.
I can't find it.
Proxemics.
Here.
Let me see if I can get it up on the, hold on, I'm going to share this. You'll love this. Where is it? This one. That's the word. Proxemics. The study of spatial requirements of humans and animals and the effects of population density on behavior, communication, and social interaction. Now, this is the interesting part. Down here, it's not merely about interactions between individuals. On a larger scales, it helps developers, urban planners, and executives in various industries understand how people move through public spaces, how they shop, even what type of restaurants they find most comfortable.
Give me an example.
We are likely to see the recalibration of the bubble of personal space we keep around ourselves, a field of scientists call proxemics. Now, thinking about the way we now spend our time at the supermarket, 6 feet. We all know that now 2 shopping carts is 6 feet, or some of us do. I found that to be rather interesting. We also are aware if someone else is not 6 feet away from us. Our personal space has just expanded exponentially because of what's happened around us. Now, I have a really strong opinion about what's happened around us, and that's not a fun speech, so I won't give that one. But talking about the fun stuff that you notice in the shopping space, now that's worth talking about. So you want to make sure, well, let's put it this way, I don't want to preach, but I like speeches that are more lighthearted, more, did you recognize that? Or did you see I just saw in a speech rather than, you know, we really should. Those are boring and dry and they turn us off. We're under enough stress right now. I'd like to see a lot more humor about our current situation of being apart from one another. I have spent some time with Linnea and her husband even during this because we're so close, we know we're not infecting each other. But I've noticed we get looks when the three of us are standing talking to each other from other people who are standing 6 feet away from even their spouse. So I know that it's very real to a lot of people. But to me, it's just obvious that everybody reacts to this a little differently. And I like to see what's funny about it. And there's enough of it on the internet that we can really laugh if we want to. The whole toilet paper thing really went crazy. So that was a great topic for several speeches, and I've heard several of them already. So it is really, that's right. Lance, your cat's eating your dinner. I love it. There are things around us that make us smile, or they make us think, or they make us wonder. That's where you want to write your speech titles. If you're a journal kind of person, or you keep a little piece of something to write on in your car, it's a great place when you're stopped at a light to write down those ideas that you just heard. Or better still, turn on your smartphone, get the audio recorder going, and as you're driving, talk it out loud. Whatever you heard, whatever you saw, make sure you're talking it out loud, because those are the substance of speeches that'll be much more fun to deliver and much more fun to listen to.
I inadvertently used a word that I didn't really know what it meant today in a Facebook post. After posting, I thought I'd better look it up. The word was dystopia or dystopian. And when I looked it up, I find that the definition is an imaginary place or state in which a condition of life is extremely bad, as from deprivation, oppression, or terror. So I wish I could take that word back, but now I could give a speech on that, and I could give a funny speech contrasting the definition of the word with reality.
Very good. Anybody else before we call it an evening? Yes, James.
No, just want to say what you were saying, Cersei, about, like when you're driving and you have a thought, you could just grab your phone and, record yourself or jot something down. It's true. I remember I was back in Seattle. I used to be a personal trainer training this judge. And oftentimes during our personal training session, I don't know what about me and her during our 1 hour session, she had I gave her so much ideas because she stops our session so many times to jot down ideas. I said, what are you doing? I said, get down and do 10 more push-ups. She said, no, give me a second, right? And she said, this is an idea that she will be writing book. She wants to publish book in future. So if she wasn't faking back then, I better check with her now to see if she wrote a book with all those ideas I gave her.
There you go.
So anyways, all those ideas become speeches like you were saying. And when you add it all together, I think that becomes a book.
Oh yeah. Just make sure your audio recorder's on your front screen. So all you have to do is press the button and start it. You don't have to pick up the phone so the cop behind you writes you a ticket. Yeah.
If you're listening to other people, you'll get ideas. Like I just got an idea for a speech from what James said. And the speech would be accidents I have had while jotting down notes for published speeches while driving.
I mean, we think about some of the greatest idea came down from some CEO or some inventor jotting down idea on the back of the napkin, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any final words? Steve, yes.
One quick note, and perhaps you've already thought of this, back to the coaching of our District 52, we all want them all to do very well, whoever moves on, but we're working on one dimension, and we always try to move with a purpose. Now I've worked in the movie business as I'm in charge of camera movements, dollies, cranes, and there's always a pan, a zoom, a tilt, but we can't do that. So we've got to come up with something, you know, we've got to come up with some kind of frame. We got to know our frame lines. But if there's, you know, maybe you want to, you've already thought of this, but when you're coaching these people, if there's an emotional word or phrase, just to, you know, when they need to move in to make that point a little bigger, just to give, you know, because we don't want to be robotic and, you know, just not move. So we have to make the camera our friend somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. I was watching Robert Chan deliver his international speech, and at one point he was making a really strong point, and he practically ate the camera when he was talking. And it was effective. It was short. It wasn't distracting, but and you did the same thing when you did your speech. You leaned in from the waist forward at us while you were talking, and it was like you were coaching us at that moment, just like you were saying that coaching phrase.
Yeah, we just got to change it up a little
effective. Bit. Absolutely, very effective.
Okay.
The principle of movement, when you want to emphasize something, you move a little bit closer, then drift back again, so you can come closer again later when there's something else.
Yeah, we just don't want to go.
And you can do lateral movement, like I've been talking about point number 1. Now I'm going to move over and talk about point number 2, and I'll switch over to the other side.
Right.
Lateral movement, lateral movement.
Right.
So frame lines are, you know, we've got to stay.
Absolutely.
Our frame lines.
You can't move. Well, you can't move off the camera like that.
Right.
You have to kind of watch what you're doing.
And we can't.
And you can practice on Zoom just by getting the free 40-minute account and just create a Zoom room for yourself.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun too. Yes.
I put the link to the video. Ignore the link I put to my post because I'm shocked I didn't put a link to the video in it. But there's a link to the video. It's a compilation of several of us roasting together. And Kathleen Walters stole the show.
Kathleen Lubin.
Blonde jokes.
No, Kathleen Lubin. That's Janet Walters and Kathleen Lubin.
So enjoy the video. 10 minutes. You'll see Susie and I roasting her and Lance is roasting her. But Kathleen just stole the show.
She did.
It was hysterical.
And Janet, thank you for being such a good sport about that. That was what made it perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
We could all learn from that too. All of us, even though we might be a little uncomfortable being roasted, all of us could learn from that experience as well. Yeah. Well, I have enjoyed all of you immensely. It's been fun exchanging ideas and talking to you about your speeches and how you develop them. And I would love to hear other things that you have thought about after this is over. So I'm going to post this video after I get it up and on YouTube. I'll post it on Facebook on the District 52 Facebook page. Go ahead and feel free to comment about it and let me know what you've developed. Ava, I want to know when you're giving that icebreaker so I can come listen to it.
Ava, I put the word in chat, so before it goes away.
Yeah. Ava, what club are you in?
Judy and James.
Oh, great. Judy, invite me when she gives her icebreaker, okay?
Oh, it'll be soon.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. Oh, I haven't been to Lofty's Zoom meeting, so that'll be fun too.
I want to acknowledge James and Judy for making Lofty into an awesome club. Really good job.
Yes, very good.
Ava, by the way, Mr. Lance Webster is the founder of the Lofty Speakers about, 6 years ago? Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So cool.
There's a lot of very important people on this call.
It suffered until I left, and then they made it good.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope you got some good ideas, and I hope you share when we post the video. I hope that all of you have more fun with your speaking because of this. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Yes, Marcia.
Can I just make a really quick announcement? I've just scheduled 12 speakathons. They'll be posted on the website tomorrow. It's first come, first serve, because it turns out we've had a really good demand. So I scheduled a whole bunch more.
Good. Excellent. Yes, I put the May 9th one up and I will get the other ones. I remembered that I can copy them. So I
Percy,
made the first one copyable.
And they're all sponsored by clubs, not the district.
Right.
you have some pathways instructionals coming up too, right?
Can't hear you.
You have some pathways instructionals coming up, right?
You mean
Pathways,
Zoom
those are Dawn Jenkins. She's doing
Oh,
those.
okay, good. They're on
Yes,
the
that's a whole separate track. We've got a lot of things going on. This was different. This was something that when Judy and I were talking, came up in conversation, so we started this. The Pathways is a Dawn Jenkins creation, and the speak-a-thons are the clubs doing it, wanting more time to speak, getting more educationals. I actually did a worksheet today. I checked to see which clubs are encouraging more members to get their projects done. And it turns out I thought I'd have more clubs that were vying for the top spot, but we have one club that has 80% of their members have submitted educational awards, 80%.
Very good. Who
The
is it?
next four down were in the 60s, and everybody else was way under that. So I'm going to be posting that information on our website and Facebook. The club that got 80% was Speaking Your Business. Very proud of that club.
It's great when you don't have to find locations for everything, isn't it?
That's true.
It is true, and we should be speaking more and processing more educational. So I'm hoping this report gets the word out that we're doing that. So, all right, everybody, have a good night. Go have dessert. It's time for dessert.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Excellent
Bye.
training. Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye, Steve.
Thank you, everybody.